viewers, days after large-scale disruption at major airports across India, the chairman of IndiGo Airline has finally broken his silence. In his first public statement since widespread operational disruptions hit IndiGo last week, Chairman Vikram Singh Mehta has rejected allegations that the crisis was engineered. Once again, a token apology was offered, and Mehta also said that claims that the airline's board was not engaged on the FDTL issue are not correct. He's announced that the airline's board will involve an external technical expert to help determine the root causes and ensure corrective action. Mehta has asserted that the airline was operating under the new pilot rest rules throughout, both in July and November.
There are some allegations that are untrue. That IndiGo engineered the crisis, that we tried to influence government rules, that we compromised safety, that the board was not involved. These claims are incorrect. IndiGo has followed the pilot fatigue rules as they came into effect. We operated under the new rules throughout, both in July and in November. We did not attempt to bypass them. The disruptions of last week did not happen because of any deliberate action.
But what has added insult to the injury of lakhs of passengers who were affected by the crisis is the compensation measure announced by IndiGo. IndiGo said it will offer travel vouchers worth 10,000 rupees to passengers who were severely affected by flight disruptions on December and 5th. The airline says this compensation, in addition to the commitment under the existing government guidelines as per which IndiGo will provide compensation of 5,000 to 10,000 rupees to customers depending on the block time of their flight, will be for those whose flights were cancelled within 24 hours of departure time. Imagine, viewers, this is what's being offered as compensation for unimaginable pain and misery that people went through during the unprecedented travel disruption. Some of these passengers missed their own wedding receptions. Some others couldn't attend funerals of their loved ones. There were others who missed their interviews and exams. Here's a quick recap of how people found themselves to be helpless during the peak of this IndiGo crisis.
सबसे पहले दिल्ली जाना है, दिल्ली से फ्लाइट लेना है देहरादून का, देहरादून से हम लोग हरिद्वार जाएंगे, विसर्जन करना है कल, बट इन्होंने सडनली फ्लाइट कैंसिल कर दिया. हमारे पास प्रायर नोटिफिकेशन कुछ भी नहीं भेजा.
My husband passed away and I have come here to transport the coffin, the casket, all the way to Kolkata to be buried. We booked an IndiGo flight. This is at 7:10 and till now we have no information whether the flight is going to take off or not.
टिकट कैंसिल किया, आप रहने को दो, खाने को दो, सोने को दो, और मुझे कोई भी हालत में आज रात की फ्लाइट चाहिए, क्योंकि मेरी लड़की बीमार है. अगर कुछ भी हो गया ना तो मैं छोड़ूंगी नहीं किसी को.
Look at those distraught passengers. That's just a small sample. We have dozens of other reactions. You would have seen, the viewers, the kind of reactions that have come in. People who've missed their wedding receptions, those talking about, the remains of their near and dear ones. There are so many such examples. And it's absolutely no surprise. When we went on and asked some of the common citizens in the national capital, what did they have to say about this compensation announced by IndiGo? Here's the response. Listen in for yourself.
What is the point of a voucher? It requires you to again take the same airline, right? The airline that has treated you in this horrible way. So and I don't think any of those passengers want to take another IndiGo flight. So that makes no sense. My friends who've gone through it, I had a friend who was stuck there for 18 hours. Nobody wants to be on the IndiGo airline again.
They should have given a plan on how do they plan to fix this and how do they want to take the new policies that the DGCA came up with and how do they plan to incorporate it in their operations, because all these fiasco happened because they did not do it on time.
Now, while Chairman Mehta has sought to absolve the board, here are some of the big questions that still arise despite all the announcements and attempts from IndiGo's side to try and clear its image. Firstly, shouldn't board members, apart from the CEO, have spoken much earlier? Isn't this a reiteration of IndiGo's earlier statements about a quote-unquote combination of factors being responsible? 3, can the board even be believed when it says that the IndiGo's actions were deliberate when even the aviation minister himself suspected something quote-unquote intentional? Isn't the board's claim that the airline adhered to FDTL norms questionable given the scale of the crisis that we saw? Then, doesn't the board's defense sound hollow when more than 755 IndiGo cancellations were there in November alone? 6. Isn't IndiGo's 10,000 rupees voucher to passengers severely affected between 3rd and 5th of December, amounting to belittling of passengers' suffering? 7. Will the board accept criminal liability for the crisis that unfolded under their watch? Debate coming up on the other side.
You're watching the News Hour at 10. Debate number 1 on Times Now. Super Prime Time.
Joining us for more is Tushar Gupta, political analyst. We have with us Dr. Sumit Sushilan, AAC member and Minister of the Civil Aviation, and also Chairman of Divine Air. Tehseen Poonawala, political analyst, is with us. Captain Amit Singh, aviation expert and founder of Safety Matters Foundation, is with us. Vijay Gopalan, former CFO of AirAsia India, is also with us. Let me start with you first. Vijay Gopalan, you know, there is a CAR. The CAR has some specifics, to the best of my memory and knowledge. One is that there are certain situations where you have to offer refreshments. There are certain situations where you have to provide a hotel room. And despite providing all of that, you have to also provide accommodation. Now, in the case of IndiGo, and I can tell you because I went last Friday to the airport and I spoke to dozens of distraught passengers. The entire airport looked like a railway station, by the way, with people sitting on the floor, crowding the entire area. There were passengers who received nothing. Not even a message that their flight has been cancelled. And what are these 10,000 rupees then going to do? And what are they compensating for?
I'm kind of speechless at this point in time. Not so much so about this 10,000, but I think about how IndiGo has fundamentally not adhered to the civil aviation regulations when it comes to cancellation. I think that's the question that we should ask even before we look at whether the 10,000 is sufficient or not. Firstly, this 10,000 is a little too late for sure, but I don't think this is by any means going to compensate for the kind of hardships that a lot of those passengers have gone through. Examinations missed, as you very rightly said, weddings missed, funerals missed. I mean, it's insane. It's insane.
And let me bring in Tushar Gupta on that note. Tushar Gupta, what is this 10,000 rupees for? And what on earth is the Ministry of Civil Aviation, DGCA, waiting for? Yes, they formed a committee. Yes, they've summoned the CEO, Peter Elbers. One would expect the ministry to act with a little more alacrity. Fine, you've frozen the prices, you put those price caps, you formed a committee. But you know what is the most unfortunate part? Whether there's anything involving the citizens of this country, whether it is the tragedy that has taken place in Goa, whether it is the Royal Challengers, the Royal Challengers kind of stampede that we saw happen in Bengaluru, there will be a committee formed, public anger will dissipate, and then there'll be some other harebrained solution. Is this what we expect from the IndiGo crisis?
Absolutely not, Madhav. First of all, good evening. Look, what the IndiGo crisis has revealed is a direct confrontation between a monopoly and the state. The state notified the rules in collaboration with all the carriers. Somehow, all the carriers signed up for the rules except IndiGo. And today, you actually have the DGCA micromanaging the operations of IndiGo, given the two teams that have been sort of stationed at their corporate offices. Now, this is not ideal. The government shouldn't be in the business of any business. But IndiGo has forced the government's hand, and therefore this micromanaging is important. But this is for the short term. The refunds, the vouchers, they all are for the short term. I think in the long term, and this will be the issue, this will be the episode that sets the precedent for the future, this is how the government is going to decide what really to do with IndiGo. The vouchers and the refunds are not enough. I'm not saying these are enough. But in the long term, a solution has to be worked out which compensates all the passengers fairly, beyond the refunds and the vouchers. And secondly, to avoid any confrontation between a monopoly or even a duopoly and the state in the future, some rules need to be set. And that is what needs to be done with IndiGo right now. That is what the government will probably do in the long term.
On two counts, that argument doesn't hold. And I'll tell you why. One, the very fact that in the month of November, there were over 700 cancellations on the same issue of FDTL norms not being met. That should have been the biggest red flag for the Aviation Ministry, for the DGCA, to have told IndiGo, look here, you're not fulfilling the norms. You need to stop right now. You need to either cancel your flights, inform passengers well in time, or get pilots in on emergency basis. Do whatever you have to ensure that these cancellations don't happen. Now, there may have been software glitches, but they didn't do that. Why?
And I agree with you, Madhav. A week ago, exactly when I was with Times Now, I made the same statement that the government is guilty of not micromanaging the HR operations of IndiGo after that fiasco in November. It was guilty of not doing that, and today it's doing exactly that. So you're right that saying that the government was wrong to trust the carrier to do its duty. The government was wrong to trust the carrier to do the right thing when it came to the passengers. The government was wrong to trust IndiGo to schedule flights they could fly, not the ones they had to cancel. So the government was wrong on those accounts, and that is why today the government is getting into the business of IndiGo ensuring that they only promise what they can deliver.
No, Captain Amit Singh, do you agree with that? Because on the face of it, look at the kind of statements coming in. You have the chairman who speaks out after 5-6 days, and he says that it is incorrect to say that the board was not involved. We were waiting for Mr. Peter Elbers, the CEO, to come out and make his statement. For heaven's sake, if the board was involved, what were they doing? Sleeping at the wheel?
Madhav, the government is not leading. It is still IndiGo which is leading. IndiGo is telling what the next steps are instead of the government telling. And people want a closure ultimately. They want definite timelines and they want definite solutions to their problems and extended problems. I'll tell you, this will basically perpetuate into kind of a PTSD for the passengers. Next time there's a delay, those passengers who are affected will have some kind of a reaction either on ground or in flight. They won't trust. That trust has disappeared. So, in case there's a delay announced on ground, 1 hour, 2 hours, all the passengers will flock towards the information desk or hold the airlines officers there. So that is a problem which is going to develop in the long term. Short term, what is the compensation? Compensation is for the missed opportunity, lost opportunity. In the economic sense, it is different, which is the next best opportunity. But if somebody's missed his own marriage, what is the next best opportunity? So there has to be some kind of a formula that the government has to form and present to the people or direct IndiGo to follow rather than the measly 10,000 rupees which they are offering. So at least give a minimum what Europe offers, 600 euros, and to the senior citizens and others who are affected by medical issues or treatment, other things, there has to be a higher compensation that we have demanded, 1 lakh or 2 lakh. So that kind of a compensation has to be there because everybody will end up in the consumer court. And the consumer courts in the past have allotted, like to Justice Kurian, they have given 7.5 lakhs for the case against Qatar Airways. And similarly, there have been 4 or 5 other cases. So if everybody flocks 8 lakh cases in the consumer courts, they're going to get overwhelmed. So it is for the state to decide because this is a mass kind of a tragedy. So the state has to decide a formula which is fair, equitable and just, which is acceptable to people rather than IndiGo deciding what they want to do and then every individual runs to the court because the government is not willing to give anything in a definite timeline. Or
Sumit Sushilan, I want Sumit Sushilan to respond to that. Sumit Sushilan, fine that you formed a committee, but people's patience is also wearing thin. Government may say we are keeping all options open. We may take action on the airline, but where are those hefty fines? Why has the government forgotten about all of this?
No. Government are very active on this thing, and as the Captain Amit said, there should be a penalty on airlines that to 1 to 2 lakh rupees. You have to understand, if we start imposing such a penalties, we have hardly 5 to 6 airlines in India. People will not enter this industry to start any more airline in India.
5 to 6? I thought we have only 2 airlines. Other 80% of India just 2 airlines, IndiGo and Air India. That's something the government should have thought of long ago before allowing a duopoly in the first place.
There are several airlines in India. There are cancellation of the flight happening earlier. But this is the first time when IndiGo started doing it because the public trusts them. The IndiGo on-time performance, people trust them. That's why they started opting to fly with IndiGo. And this got, definitely they got disappointed because of this past 2-3 days. But putting the penalty in this way, definitely that they can collapse the airline itself.
Vijay Gopalan is holding his brow. Because, it also appears that the government also trusted them too much.
Basically, you have to understand, Madhav, that every time from past few years, I am seeing the officers coming to the DGC office, submitting their document, which was always accurate. according to the standard. That's why not only IndiGo, every airline submits their documents, we trust the documents and we give them the routes and all. And finally, this time which happened, definitely we can't say that they did wrong. But yes, it came to a disaster.
Before I go back to Vijay, Tehseen Poonawala, we always trusted them because they gave their documents for over a decade and a half. They've been doing so. So there was no reason for us to suspect they wouldn't deliver in this case. You buy that argument?
The one job that the DGCA has is to ensure that airlines follow safety protocols and our pilots who fly us are safe. This was a mandated rules by the DGCA to safeguard pilots who are always unfairly blamed for anything that goes wrong in the aviation sector. The pilots get the first blame for it unfairly. And by keeping the pilots safe, you ensure the airlines is kept safe and the people of India or the people who are traveling in the airlines are kept safe. This was basic. This is the only one job that they had to do, and they failed because they apparently, as per the chairman of Divine Airlines, which runs a VVIP charter service, they completely trusted people. Now let's come to the second part. These rules, as Tushar rightly said, came out 2 years ago, started being enforced 18 months ago. Every other airline enforced the rules, including the loss-making ones, except IndiGo. Because, hey, you know what? The government trusted them, so they thought they'd give fake papers. You know, what's that called? That's called 420 BC. That's called cheating. That's called playing with the lives. The same rules that the DGCA made to safeguard Indians and passengers, because global passengers also travel on airlines, are today being violated on DGCA's order. So, hey, Divine Airlines out here will have to follow by the rules, but another law is made for IndiGo because, hey, you know what? We trusted them. And should something go wrong, the same pilots will be held responsible and accountable. Now, tell me why should the Civil Aviation Minister not step down? This IndiGo chairperson, Mr. Mehta, not be sacked? Was Mr. Mehta sitting on his armchair, looking, not seeing on the TV what is happening, not seeing the suffering of the people, while he waited for his CEO to give a statement? Could he not pick up the phone and speak to his CEO and ask his CEO to solve the problem? One last thing. The sufferings that Times Now has put before the people. Does 10,000 compensated? Forget the mental and emotional thing. Even when your flight ticket is cancelled, let's say I'm flying to XYZ destination and I have to take another airlines or fly in Mr. Sumit's Divine Airlines, the prices go up. His is of course a charter airline, the prices go up. You should have given those people, paid for the second ticket that they had to fly in an emergency. You refuse to do that. You refuse to do all the things you've pointed out. This is a con job. And I again ask him, why should there not be criminal investigation on this?
Why should there not be criminal investigation? Tushar, respond.
Look, the investigation is for the government to decide. We cannot say it should be a criminal investigation, a consumer-driven investigation. That's for the government to decide. But clearly there is no quantifying the emotional, the sentimental, the mental harassment the passengers went through. There is no quantifying it. I mean, I may put a number to it, you may put a number to it, but at the end of the day, it's the passengers who suffered and they have to speak up. And that is where the government and the IndiGo will have to work out a formula how to better compensate the passengers. I'm not saying the vouchers being promised are the solution, but a better formula has to be worked out. But I also agree with Sumit here that how do you want to approach this problem? Look, it's a regulatory issue to begin with. The government has to now step into micromanagement, but do we create a deterrent for the future, or do we just sort of demonize the carrier to an extent where no one wants to enter the business? This is a very fine line the government will have to walk. It's not for us to decide, it's for the government to decide.
I want Vijay to answer that. I want Vijay to answer that because he's actually been in the business. And I want Vijay to also answer that and also answer another question because, you know, one of the statements that Mr. Mehta made, I found extremely astounding. Because the way he's, you know, so hands-off with this entire thing, says, no, we were hands-on, but when it comes to the crisis and the issue that has happened, this is what he says. He says, we didn't do anything that negatively impacted our unblemished track record of safety. Disruptions last week did not happen because of deliberate action. They happened because of a combination of internal and unanticipated external events, including minor technical glitches, schedule changes linked to the start of winter season, adverse weather conditions, fog has not started, I don't know what he's talking about, increased congestion in the aviation system, and implementation of /and operation under the updated crew rostering rules. What about hiring pilots? He hasn't mentioned that at all, Vijay.
See, Madhav, firstly, I'll answer both these very, very quickly. Firstly, if you want the regulators to go and set things right, the first change that we need to make is the DGCA is run by bureaucrats. You know, I think firstly the DGCA needs to have people who've been in the business to be able to form the advisory and then also end up monitoring some of these airlines. bureaucrats who've never been in the business, it's going to be virtually difficult for them to sit and frame regulations and monitor it. So I think that's a very fundamental change that we need to make. But having said which, what's catching my attention in this entire fiasco is who is taking accountability. Let's come to compensation and all those things later. Fundamentally, here we have a management team that is saying, we did all that we could. We have a board which says that we can't take accountability. We trusted the management, but you know what, this is right. Then of course we have the regulators who, and quite rightly so, and I honestly I don't want to make this a very political conversation, but the regulators are right. The regulators are not going to be running the business. So the regulators are saying we've done our oversight. Who's taking accountability at the end of the day?
Yes.
And that's something that's missing in this whole thing. No one seems to be taking accountability.
Yeah, let Sushilan respond to that, because Dr. Sushilan, at the end of the day, the point is very simple. Fine, we need structural reforms, and it is a fact. DGCA comes under the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Why should it be the case? I don't know. Why can't we have an independent regulator that's completely free from all kinds of political, superintendents? We don't know. That's happened in several sectors. Why can't that happen in civil aviation? Why? Because perhaps, I don't know, successive ministers have wanted to have a say in the way regulations also happen, which is perhaps not the healthiest thing to happen. But having said that, no accountability. Nowhere accountability is being fixed, because the CEO, the board, everyone is shunning accountability.
No, as Vijay said, we have the bureaucrats running the DGCA, but you have to understand the only DG, he's an IS officer. But when it comes to the other officers, the director, the joint directors and all, they all are the experts who are sitting in this position. So, even when the Navika had an interview with our Honorable Minister, we have clearly mentioned that every recruitments are done on the basis where they are only recruiting only experts. So we have experts on board. We have experts who are taking care of the DGCA. So I don't think that there is anything like fault in the DGCA side. Definitely,
there's no problem on DGCA side. No, that's a very important and contentious statement you're making, Captain Amit Singh. There's no problem on DGCA side.
But DGCA's job is oversight. So we are right now in the reactionary mode. Every time something happens, then we react, rather than being proactive or predictive. So in today's day, when a lot of data is available, when the DGCA has real-time information on fares, on the flights, and on FTTL, they can have access of pilots, FTTL, and rosters from sitting in DGCA. And at this stage, if you say experts have done this kind of a job, then I have serious doubts on the capability of the experts. Because we have to predict in the next few years, the roadmap is next 5 years.
Yeah.
What is the requirement of an airline, number of pilots, and how are you going to play out? How are you going to recruit the 900 pilots you're saying?
Yes.
So that has to be given.
Absolutely. And that's a huge, big uphill task that they have to fulfill. I want to begin, Tushar. Tushar, the fact is this, that even this compensation is coming after the Delhi High Court has spoken about compensation and the need to comply with it. So it's not because of the Ministry of Civil Aviation's actions, many will say. It is because the High Court has adjudicated on this or given those observations that has forced IndiGo's hand. Otherwise, why will they give this compensation?
Look, first thing, I really wish IndiGo shouldn't require the government or the judiciary forcing its hand to issue the compensations. And compensations without the overhead cost, the convenience fees and all that. I think they should be upfront about the compensation. At least one thing they can be upfront about, because they were not upfront about the flights. Number two, again, we have to now start considering the options the government really has. They are already into the micromanagement of the operations. They will take stock of the number of pilots IndiGo has, the number of flights they're confirming. Already the flights have been cut from 5 to 10%. So clearly the government is now getting into the oversight model. But to what extent is also the question. At what point does the government tell IndiGo that this is our oversight, this is what we are going to do? Now you really need to do your job, which is to begin with.
Well, the government has a lot in its power. The government has a lot in its power. Quick closing comment, Tehseen. What point of time does the government step back? Quick response.
The DGCA slept when in 39 days in June and July, 5 choppers crashed. They've been repeatedly warned to get in the rosters to put in. IndiGo has been criminally involved if they've lied to the government and not hired pilots. Last month in November, we had GPS spoofing, as a result of which flights were delayed. We know every December winter sets in and pilots and plane schedule go for a toss. And yet IndiGo criminally continued this with this chairperson, allowing it to fall across. And what's scary is on Times Now, Sumit G says, we for the government while he runs an airline. So if he's colluding with the DGCA, say we are applying this, and he speaks for the government who's running an airline, that is conflict of interest. That needs to stop. That shows the cahoots that's going on out here.
So, Mr. Sheelan, quick response. Conflict of interest, respond.
Yeah, we are independent people who are on the board, okay, as an expert, and we give our views to the experts so that, the things go smooth.
Okay. Okay, let's leave it there. Let's leave it there. There are many questions. I don't think anybody is happy with the kind of responses coming out of IndiGo. One would have expected the airline to be a little more humble and a little bit more understanding about the pain and absolute chaos that they've caused as far as the lives of passengers and the Indian economy is concerned. Probably hundreds of crores, I don't know, thousands of crores. Maybe some economic body should quantify the kind of losses that India has suffered because of those few days of passenger pain. But nothing can replace those whose significant milestones in their life have been snatched away because of poor management by this airline. We'll have to leave it there. Tushar Gupta, Mr. Sheelan, Tehseen Punawala, Captain Amit Singh, Vijay Gopalan, thanks so much for joining us this evening.